what this is?
An engine.
An engine to what? If you're really good. Come on, we got any gearheads in the group? Truck? Anything else? Anybody else got a guess? How about, this might help. It's an old Mustang. So this is what it looks like restored. So how do you get it from that first picture where it was pretty nasty to this one? It takes a lot of work. And you have to have the manual, right? You need to have the right manual to do this. Isn't that beautiful? One of Tim's first cars was a
66 Mustang, fastback. Hey-o, 289.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But you have to have the right manual. So each one of you were meant to go fast, to operate well, but because of life, we get a little rusty, we get a little corroded, things happen to us. But in order to restore us, even beyond the place where we were first born, we've got to have the right manual, right? So what are you supposed to look like? What's your partner supposed to look like? Look at them. Look at the person that you're with. You know, you don't know what they're supposed to look like. I did not know what Tim was supposed to look like. If I was trying to fix him early on in our marriage, I would have fixed him to become something that he should not have been. Because only God had the picture of the man that he's supposed to be.
And not this beautiful specimen you see before you now.
So, a personality gifting, we're all born with this personality, and it's a river that's been flowing through your soul since your birth. So your personality is like this river that flows through you. But because we live in a fallen world, a sin world, I was born with rejection all over me. Not only was I an oops baby, and my mom did not want a fifth baby because she was done. The sibling closest to me was 5 years older than me. She didn't want any more. She already had 4. That rejection came on me in the womb. But it was also a generational thing. My parents had it. My grandparents had it. My mom, she still battles it. My dad had his mother died when he was younger, and his dad had several mail order brides that beat the kids. So he had huge rejection. So it was like I came out and they were like, here. It was, so a generational curse is like this river, this personality, but it gets bent into a sin habit in our lives. Rejection was this bend in this river that was supposed to be flowing pure and clear and clean in my life. In Exodus 25, it says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me. So what does that mean? That means the sins, like the rejection that happened to my dad, passed to me, and will pass to my kids and to my grandkids. But a curse cannot alight without a cause. The Bible also tells us that. So every time I partner with it, I give it a legal right in my life. When the kids bullied me on the playground and they said that I was ugly, I believed them, and I gave that generational thing that was born over me a legal right to come in to begin to harass me. So we all have those, and they begin to bend our personality and change us. My brother would say, you talk too much. You talk too much. All my siblings were like, you talk too much. Because I was the baby, and they were all teenagers by then, and they didn't want to hear me, and they were the only ones around. So there weren't any other kids my age, so of course I talked to them. But that was part of my personality. I like to be talking. I like to be engaged. I like to be excited. But that shut me down, and I lost my voice for a long time. It created a bend in my personality that was not God's original design. But Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. My soul, my personality, there was stuff in it. As he leads us through this valley, he restores us. He restores us to our original design. And we have to embrace that. So as we talk about personality styles, there are times, I remember there was one couple in one of my young adult groups, and his personality was a real strong, like, perfectionist and, you know, real intense and everything like that. And as he got more and more healed, all of a sudden he got to be this silly, goofy guy that liked to be up on stage with a guitar and sing. And it was like, everybody's like, what? But he began getting restored to who he was supposed to be. And that the depressed, rejected perfectionist was something his dad put on him, but that wasn't who his dad said he was. And when he finally stepped into his identity, things just shifted in his life. So as we go through this, you may look at things and you may look at a personality and say, oh, this is me, but it may not actually be you. So I want you to take everything before the Lord. Okay? Because just because your parents were that way and their grandparents were that way, and you've learned the behavior, I mean, being quiet, not fitting in, that may not be who God intends you to be. So always hold this kind of stuff with an open hand. Okay? Cool? Cool, cool, cool? Okay. So when we talk about the 4 personalities, in the assessment that you took online, it mirrors really closely to the DISC assessment. And DISC, when it was designed, was not supposed to stand for anything. It's just DISC. There's not really names for those. People assign names, but there's really not. But if you look at those 4 quadrants of the DISC, the personality strengths of those line up with the faces of the 4 creatures in Ezekiel and in Revelation. There's these creatures before the Lord, and they have the face of a man, an ox, a lion, and an eagle. So if you look at the characteristics, the eagles, they see a long way. They have keen eyesight. They pick up the updraft, but they're very protective of their families. Very, very protective of their nest and their territory. Those would be your C's. The D's are like the lions. They're loud in a crowd, but they like to rule and make things happen. The lions, that would be your D. The I's are the people or the angel. They love the party. They love everybody to be excited. They think everything should be fun, and they move at a fast pace. Those are your I's. And the S's are the oxes. They're faithful. They're loyal. They can go and serve forever and ever. So if you take the scriptures, there's a lot of scriptures, which is a whole big broken down thing that I've done in the past. So I'm doing you a really quick synopsis here, and then you're going to break out in your small groups and talk about it. You should have gotten your assessments from your leaders when you came in. Did everybody get a copy of their assessment?
I haven't pulled it yet.
Okay, well, you want to hand them out real quick? So we'll be looking at those assessments and how they compare to the DISC. And I sent the link on our page for the DISC. Did everybody get a chance to take that? Kind of helps to break it down a little bit more. If not, you'll be able to figure it out mostly. So we're going to talk about, there's 5 different types, versatility, developing your versatility with your personality. That's a big blah, blah, blah when you have braces. So it's really important to learn how, I remember when I was at IHOP, y'all know what, International House of Prayer in Kansas City one time at a conference. There was a guy up there talking about missionaries. And he says the problem with American missionaries is they go in and they want the country that they go to, they were trying to shift the culture of what missionaries look like. They wanted to change the culture to Americanize them. And they were ruining cultures. They would come in and they build big houses, and they want hire servants and pay them well, and they thought they were helping them, but they were taking away who they were. Instead of raising up leaders of the nations. And being a true missionary is learning about the culture that you're going into it, honoring it, understanding it. Okay, so you are going into a new culture, a new country of Nathan. And you want to learn the language of Nathan. You want to learn the values, the way things happen, the way he speaks, his strengths, and carry honor. So each one of you are going into a new country of the person across from you. Tim was a new country, and I had to learn his language. So this, what we're going to talk about right here, is going to help you to understand the language of the person that's sitting next to you. So there's 5 different versatility. So this is the page that you should have gotten. Everybody got that page? So you're in one of those quadrants. So they've added it around. So it looks a lot like this. So the top, the very top, is task-oriented, and the very bottom is people-oriented. So this is, and so your D's would be between the task and the faster pace. Does that make sense?
See the D, the letters in the corner?
See the letters in the corner, D-I-S-C? The I's would be between the faster paced and the people-oriented. The C's would be between the task-oriented and the slower paced. And the S would be between the slower paced and the people-oriented. Yes?
I have a question. Well, obviously, because my hand's raised. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, I've taken it before and I've gotten one thing, and then this is showing me something different. So,
The reason is, you've taken this particular test,
I
or?
haven't taken Symbis. I'm like obsessed with all things personality, and I've taken everything.
So what were you on the disc?
On the disc, I was a D. I was like high D, low I, and here am I.
Okay, so the reason is, I think, is because they don't show you the full percentage.
Okay.
So you can be like an IC, which is Chad, I think, is a CI, if I remember correctly, back from before y'all got married, which was how many, 8, 9 years ago, right? Long time ago. How, 11 years ago.
Yeah, 10 or 11 years.
So CIs are really rare. But this little assessment that you got will not show that at all, because it goes in a circle, right? So it wouldn't show somebody that's got some of the C and some of the I, because there's no across. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're high in a D, and maybe you've got some S as your second high one, is S your second?
It was, when I took it before, it was DI, and then this is showing me as an I.
Okay, that's because it only shows you one piece of it.
Got it.
So that's why I recommend, and I like just sending out the disc assessment to everybody, because it's a little more comprehensive, I guess is the word. Does that make sense? So, so there's 2 different grids on the disc. There's the priority. We all have a priority. And it's important to understand these things. You're like, why are we talking about personality stuff? Because if one of you, your priority is tasks, and the other one's priority is relationship, you may be doing, and thinking you're loving them by doing, and they're like, why aren't you sitting with me? Don't you love me, right? My dad was huge task-oriented, and when I learned this, I was like, oh, he loved me so much, because he served me all the time. That was his purpose. And some people are relationship-oriented, and they have a hard time. They get distracted easily if they're really strong in that area. But we're all a mixture. And then the left and right is the slower and the quicker. That's your pace that you move at. So your modus operandi is your motivation. That's either task or people. And the side one is your pace. It's either slower or faster. So you get people that they can just talk off, and then there's other people. So I'm very fast paced, and Tim is slower paced. So I'd ask him a question. And by the time he answered, I've moved on like 5 different conversations in my head.
Yep.
Everybody else see that?
The struggle is real.
Yeah.
Or he asks me a question and I answer and then I say something else and he goes, oh, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I went from there to there to there to there to there. He was like, oh, okay. But we had to learn that and navigate that. But saying that you need a little time is okay. It's actually good. So your purpose-oriented are your C's and your D's. Who are your C's and D's? So your highest one are C's or D's?
Oh.
Okay. They're task-oriented, they're goal-oriented, they like the facts, they're intense, and they're determined. Those are your C's and your D's. Who are the people-oriented? The S's and I's. That's your highest one. But you're probably a mixture. They're relationship-oriented. They like to express their emotions for the most part. They're relaxed, they're funny, they're pleasant to be around. And so we talked about this. So the D's and the I's on the other side are your quicker paced ones. Who are your D's and I's? I'm actually halfway between a D and an I with almost no S and C. Yeah. So they're quick, they're decisive, they're risk takers, they're outgoing, and they're action oriented. And the slower paced ones, the C's and the S's, who are your C's and S's? You got to know who you're sitting next to. Learn about them. They're patient, they're cautious, they're reserved, they're analytical. So I remember a conversation that we had at one point in time. We were driving down the road and I said, I think we should get foster kids. And Tim goes, is that your C, is that your D or your I speaking? And I was like, it's my I. Because if I was speaking from my I, it just popped into my head. And I hadn't really thought it through. If it was my D, I've already got an action plan built. It was something that was going to happen. So when I said it was my I, he was like, okay. It means I don't have to build bunk beds or remodel the house or something. So as you go through this, I want you to look at these different personalities, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but look at their strengths. Sometimes we look at people as their weaknesses, and you need to look at their strengths. And this is all on your handouts. I've got it, I put it all there for you, especially for your C's out there that like all the notes done. And she's like, she's talking too fast! They hunger for understanding and excellence. So if you're an I and you're married to a C, or you're getting married to a C, you've got to let them load the dishwasher because you're going to do it wrong. Or decide where things need to be put away in the closet because he still loads the dishwasher. One of our biggest fights was I was doing laundry and I was folding underwear and he goes, you're folding my underwear all wrong. And I'm like, you fold underwear? I like throw it in the drawer and move on. And so I just picked it all up and just threw it at him. It's like, you can fold it. He's like, that's okay. And he did, because he was in the Navy. You fold it a correct way when you're in the Navy.
There is a wrong way to do it.
There is definitely there was one.
So their reaction phrase, and I'm going to go through these. The C's reaction phrase is, I've got to make sure I do it right. So C's have to learn how to be a part of a team and partner and let people help them. The D's are your lions. They're productive. They hunger for productivity and speed. They hunger for challenges. And their action phrase is, let's get it done now. Of course, they want you to do it for them. Most of the time, they want a crowd of people to get it done now or yesterday would even be better. And when the going gets tough, the D's get going. They thrive on challenges. So if you're married to a D and things are hard, don't hold it inside. They want to create possibilities and solutions. They don't feel like you're adding any burden to them because they love that and they want to be that person for you. The I's are influencers. They're inspired. They're involved. They're interested. They're a little impulsive. They have about 5 books they've started and not finished. That's one of my things now. I have to finish a book before I start it, even though I do have 2 or 3 that I've started still. But I try to finish them. Pardon?
It's okay.
It's okay. I have grace for me now. They hunger for enthusiasm. They want people to be excited, and they hunger for like groups of people. Their reaction phrase is, let's all get excited. What about they don't really care as long as we're all excited? So let's be excited. Your S's, your Oxes are steady, they're supportive, they're servants, they're stable, and there's sometimes a sucker. Tim's an S, and when we first got married, you know, you'd be on your phone, you know, and we had one of those long, you know, where your phone was attached to the wall.
Okay, it's called a landline. Once upon a
landline.
time,
And
the
I
phone
would
company
walk
would
into the
attach wires to
kitchen,
your house.
and he would be
That's how you talk.
completely wrapped up in the cord, and I'd be like, okay, he's been here for a while. And then finally he'd go, oh, okay, all right, thank you, goodbye. And he'd be in there like for 15, 20 minutes. I was like, who are you talking to? And he was like, oh, it was a salesperson. He was like, I feel so bad for them. They need to practice. And I'm like, no, just hang up on them. But he's a nice guy. That's what you want on your side, right? So, but they can be a little bit, you know, of a nice, too nice. So they need people to come alongside them and say, it's okay to hang up the phone. It really is okay. So I put on there, and y'all are going to discuss this a little bit in your breakout, is the relational needs of how to relate to each of the personalities, to learn about the person and ask them. So they may be a D, I, or so depending on what environment I am in is how Tim needs to relate to me. Sometimes it's his S, and when we're fighting, he needs to say, I need to process. You've got to give me a minute. And I'll be like, okay, what does that mean to you? Is that 5 minutes? Is that a day? How long do you need to process this? And that's okay. You, as you're speaking their language, you've got to give them room to process if they're slower paced. Or C would be the same way. They would need a little bit slower time processing it, unless they're, you know, CI. So you have to ask questions to each other. You have to ask these questions. What do you need? How are you feeling? How can I support you? Can you tell me what you're feeling? And it took Tim years. In fact, we just did a class. I'm gonna do a little poster. How We Love is a great class if you don't know what you're feeling, or you don't know how to get in touch with your feelings, or you don't know where those feelings are coming from. That we have it going on Monday nights throughout the year. So it's a great course to take. And we took it, and Tim was like, wow, I have other emotions. I didn't even know that. And I have a plethora. So, but you're gonna talk about that, and you're gonna learn how to disagree. Look at this little form, it's in your notes. How do you disagree with that person? Because a D can't go up to a D and say you're wrong, because it's like, gloves off, dude, we're gonna fight, you know? Because they like to be right. So you've gotta learn how to negotiate. This is a dance. This is a dance. You're doing a dance with somebody, and sometimes one of you's gonna lead and sometimes the other one's gonna lead. But you gotta learn what you're dancing to. And learn how to communicate with each other, and learn how to fight. And that will be one of our classes down the road a little bit, is learning how to fight. But learning how to fight with the different personality. We can't just put it into one little package, because some of you are, you know, Land Rovers, and some of you are Corvettes, and some of you are minivans, and it's okay. Whatever you are, whatever your personality mixture is, you have to learn to love you. I had to learn to love the fact that I like to be up front. I like to talk. I like to teach. And not feel bad about it, because a lot of the churches I worked in is like, women don't teach. And I got it a lot. But I had to be who God wanted me to be, and who He said I was, and embrace my personality and let it come forth. So whoever you are, whatever God's put in you, dream for it. Let it bubble up inside of you and embrace it, because it's beautiful. That personality, that mixture, that fragrance is amazing. And you want to learn how to disagree with each other so you don't squelch each other. You don't want to take their voice because that is a voice that the Lord God Almighty created and put in a person. He had a dream and wrapped their body around them. And when you try to control, manipulate, or shut them down, you're shutting down a dream of the Lord. And you're going to stand before Him and be accountable for that. Our job is to steward other people and their gifts and their strengths and their abilities. And it's important. And I have seen it. My dad was super controlling. Super controlling. And my mom was spirit-filled, and she fought against it until he died. And I'll never forget the day that the next morning she goes, man, I wish I was in heaven with him. And I said, Mother. And she said, oh no, I'd be standing there saying, I told you so. She goes, because you know they're all raising their hands and dancing. So she believed in all of that, but it took her years to get there. But he had shut her down so much and stole a lot of who she was. And you want to be with someone that celebrates you. You are worth celebrating, and your personality is worth exploring and celebrating. And we have to, the step 3 is to develop positive attitudes. We need to view others in terms of, not in terms of their weaknesses, but we have a tendency to view others in terms of their weaknesses and not their strengths, especially those with different types. You know, Tim, he viewed himself as wrong for a long time because as a man, he thought a man was supposed to be entrepreneurial and outgoing and outspoken, and he's very tender-hearted and loves to connect and have fun and play, and he didn't want to start his own business.
I thought I was supposed to.
But he thought he was supposed to. And then when he saw this, he was like, oh, okay, this is how God made me. And it's amazing. And he began to embrace who he was, and he came alive. So we have to develop that positive attitude, viewing each other in the terms of their strengths, not their weaknesses, becoming a champion of their strengths. Embrace your weaknesses and allow their strength to complement your weaknesses. Like, he is much more pastoral than I am. Much more pastoral than I am. But I was a pastor, and people would come and I would be like, hey, baby. I always brought him into it. I didn't like doing ministry without him because his gift complemented my strength, my weaknesses.
That's good.
And I needed that. I needed that in him. And plus, he keeps the dishwasher and the kitchen organized. There would be like dust bunnies all over our house if he didn't know they were there. So, and we have to be available to complement their weaknesses with our strengths. And I'm not going to go through this. It's all there. We have to identify tension areas. We tend to cause tension in other people's lives by what we do and by what we don't do. Not folding underwear correctly cause tension in him. Sometimes we don't know that we're causing tension. So you have to have a voice. God gave you a mouth and a voice to say, that bothers me. Can we figure out a different way to do this? And talk about it. Communicate. When tension occurs, we want others to change, but we don't want to change ourselves. Again, you're a missionary in a foreign country. This is all on your things. I'm going to flip through this. So you need to take versatility steps. Remember 3 relational truths. I cannot change others by direct action. Say, I cannot, change others, by direct action. I can only change myself. When I change, others will change, in response to me. That's good stuff. So there's all these notes in there of how you can demonstrate versatility by listening more, by focusing on like high D. I need to listen more. I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to focus on people. I had to train myself in areas that were not natural to me. So you can look at those.